I've watched over 1,000 anime, and if I'm being honest, action is the reason. It's what pulled me in as a kid, what kept me here as an adult, and what half my personality is built on. So today, the 25 action anime I love the most. The order is loose, the reasons are personal, and the ending is non-negotiable. Let's go. Let me open up with a show that had me googling Japanese authors at 2 in the morning. 人間失格私の能力はあらゆる他の異能力を触れただけで無効化する Bungo Stray Dogs takes real literary figures, Dazai, Akutagawa, and Fitzgerald, and rebuilds them as superpowered agents whose abilities are named after their actual books. Atsushi, an orphan who turns into a tiger he can't control, gets scooped up by the armed detective agency, and from there it's a turf war with the port mafia across the rooftops of Yokohama. I came for the fights and accidentally left with a reading list, which is a first. The thing that keeps me returning is the choreography of personalities. Atsushi fights like he's desperately clawing for the right to exist. Akutagawa fights like a wound that refuses to close, and when the two share a screen, the violent collision of their opposing worldviews does more damage than their abilities. It runs unevenly in stretches, I'll say that freely, but few shows have made me feel this stylish just for watching them. Picture the strongest spirit pet master of his generation, mid-tournament at the height of his powers, swallowed whole by the very beast he raised. That's how the all-devouring whale Homecoming opens, and covering shows like this is half the reason this channel exists. Long-time viewers know I've been banging the donghua drum for years, and this 2025 release is my newest exhibit. Fan Lingxiao, head of the Lingxiao Pavilion, gets ambushed during a sect promotion tournament and devoured by his own companion beast Kun. He wakes in the body of a stranger named Lu Fengman, imprisoned, powerless, his sect in ruins, and claws his way back from nothing. Monster taming crossed with cultivation is a combination I didn't know I wanted, and the production sells it. Expressive 2D character work over sprawling environments, creature battles with real scale. My Saturdays quietly rearrange themselves around new episodes. It even earned a Japanese TV broadcast within months of airing, which almost never happens that fast, does it? Chinese animation has been building towards something for years. I've been telling you, and you know what? This is me telling you again.
小年，你也一定非常不甘心，好想证明自己吧？前世我失败了，这事请你答应我，把挡道的统统吞掉。
I watched The Garden of Sinners in the wrong order the first time, understood maybe about 40% of it, and still thought about it for a week straight. That's the kind of spell this thing casts. It's a series of films from Ufotable adapted from Kinoko Nasu's novels, released out of chronological order and completely unbothered by whether you can keep up. Shiki Ryogi walks through a rotting urban dreamscape with eyes that can see the death in everything, the lines and points where anything, a person, a building, a ghost, can be made to end. Most of each film is atmosphere, long silences, philosophy, Yuki Kajiura's score doing terrible and beautiful things to my nervous system late at night, which is the only correct time to watch these. Then the violence arrives, and it's some of the most striking fight animation Ufotable has ever produced. The fifth film has a reputation as one of the finest anime films ever made. I rewatched the series properly in order and formally joined the cult. Approach it like a puzzle box with a knife inside. My favourite thing about Kaiju number 8 is that the protagonist is 32, and I say this as a man who feels every one of his own years. Garth guy Hibino cleans up monster guts for a living, scraping viscera off buildings after the Defense Force has had its fun, having long shelved the childhood promise to fight alongside his friend Mina, who's now a celebrated captain while he holds a mop. Then a small kaiju flies into his mouth. Yes, that really happens, and he becomes the very thing his country hunts. Teenage me would have watched this purely for the monster fights, and they deliver weighty, tactile, production IG doing clean popcorn spectacle. But current me watches it for the other thing, a man deciding his dream isn't dead just because the deadline passed. I started this channel later than most people start there, so Garthgar's arc of salvaging potential instead of discovering it lands differently when that's your own life. Watch it for the kaiju, stay for the man who refused to stay swept aside. Every anime fan has an edgy phase. Mine had a name, and it was Hellsing Ultimate. I devoured these OVAs at an age when I absolutely shouldn't have, 10 episodes trickling out between 2006 and 2012, and revisiting them as an adult confirmed something wonderful. They still go exactly this hard. Alucard, an ancient vampire kept on a leash by the Hellsing organization and its magnificently icy leader Integra, gets unleashed on a Nazi vampire battalion that wants to burn London for the sheer poetry of it. Subtle, this is not. Alucard grins through gunfire, Father Anderson of the Vatican crashes through stained glass with bayonets in both hands, and the whole production revels in gothic excess like it's being paid by the liter. Underneath the blood opera, there's a real idea. A monster who despises what he is, hunting men who choose monstrosity for fun, and that contrast gives the spectacle teeth. My taste has matured over 20 years, my love for this has not. Sometimes you don't want nuance, sometimes you want Alucard. I finished Cyberpunk Edge Runners in one sitting, then sat in the dark listening to that song on loop while my wife slept, wondering what just happened to me. If you've seen it, you know the one, don't you? Trigger took a video game world and produced 10 episodes about David Martinez, a broke kid in Night City who bolts military-grade chrome into his spine after his life collapses, then runs with mercenaries because the city offers no other ladder. The action is Trigger at full tilt. Time-slicing sprints, neon carnage, bodies moving like physics, filed a complaint and got ignored. But that's not why it wrecked me. Night City monetizes dreams and everyone chasing one. David, Lucy, Maine, the whole crew pays installments with pieces of themselves. As someone who bet a lot on a dream, cyberpsychosis as a metaphor for burning yourself up trying to matter cut closer than I'd like to admit. 10 episodes, no wasted motion. A love story, a high story, and an obituary at once. Beautiful and cruel in equal measure. Before the next entry, I need to show you something, because my desk has been compromised by Nerve. This is the officially licensed Mel Geek Evangelion Centauri 60 Asuka edition, and it's today's sponsor. All of it's customizable through Mel Geek's Hive software, ever-themed lighting presets, a startup animation that boots like an ever-activating, and a wraparound light bar that glows like unstable energy from every angle. And it's been radiating menace on my setup all week. Full Ever O2 colorway, red, black, warning yellow, themed keycaps with a supplementary accent set, the Unit 02 insignia engraved on the chassis, a rose gold knob for her hair ribbons, and I can save the human race all by myself carved into the underside. Peak Asuka energy. And it's not just cosplay, it's a 1.8 kilogram aluminium unibody with Hall effect switches, and here's why that matters. Because traditional switches have a fixed reset point. The key has to travel back up before it registers again. Rapid Trigger reads your key's position magnetically, so it resets the instant you start releasing. Watch my Valorant clips here. Count counter strafing is snappier, direction changes are faster, and in duels decided by milliseconds, that becomes a real edge. Stack on 8000 Hz polling, add the 49-gram Horus mouse and matching pad, and your desk becomes a nerve terminal. There's a Ray edition too, but you already know which pilot you are. Link below supports the channel. Now back to the video. You'll look at a ranking of kings and assume I've made a mistake. A storybook art style, a tiny print, soft colors. This is an action pick? I had the same reaction, out loud, to the friend who wouldn't stop recommending it. I owe that friend dinner. Boji is a prince who can't hear, can't speak, and can barely lift a wooden sword, mocked by his entire kingdom, and which studio uses that picture book aesthetic as a delivery system for some of the most ferocious fight animation of the 2020s. Because Boji has no strength. His fighting is built on evasion and precision, reading opponents, slipping strikes by a hair's width, dismantling people who outweigh him tenfold. His smallness becomes the entire language of the choreography, and then there's Kage, a shadow creature and the last of his clan, whose friendship with Boji had me sniffling between sword fights like an absolute fraud of a grown man. The show swings from fairy tale to real brutality without losing its warmth. Don't let the crayon colours fool you. I mean, I nearly did.
これぞまさしく王の剣。
In To Be Hero X, heroes are only as strong as the public's belief in them, and as a man whose livelihood depends on the numbers under a video, this premise attacked me personally. Trust is measured as a literal figure on your wrist. If enough people believe you can fly, then you fly. If a scandal breaks and the crowd turns, your powers evaporate mid-air. This donghua comes from Lee Haoling, the director of Link Click, and it runs the scalpel through fame, PR, and influencer culture while still delivering ludicrous superhero set pieces. The entry point is Lin Ling, an ordinary ad agency worker forced to secretly inherit the identity of a top-ranked hero, and the season fractures into interlocking arcs told out of order, each one recontextualizing the last. The visuals swing between slick 3D and wild stylized 2D depending on whose story it is, and Hiroyuki Sawano headlines the soundtrack. You already know my weakness. I finished an episode about a hero losing public trust, then immediately went and checked my analytics. The show one. Watch it. This is the part of the list where I bow my head. Cowboy Bebop is pushing 30, and its action hasn't aged a day. Spike Spiegel fights like water finding a crack, or loose shoulders and lazy footwork until somebody's on the floor. Choreography modeled on Bruce Lee's philosophy of flowing rather than forcing. I've used this show on 3 separate people who told me anime looks childish, and I'm 3 for 3, you know. The gunfights are staged with an economy modern anime rarely trusts itself to attempt. No power levels, no shouted techniques, just space, timing, and Yoko Kanno's jazz setting the tempo of the violence. What moves me most now, rewatching as an adult, is how much the action expresses character. Spike fights carelessly because he's already decided his life is borrowed, and once I saw that, every fight became a countdown, including the church confrontation in Ballad of Fallen Angels, which I maintain is a perfect scene. See you, Space Cowboy. You knew that line was coming. Years ago, in my Action Decade in Review, I called Magi one of the most underrated shonen of its era. Nobody listened, so we're doing this again. On the surface, it's Arabian Nights with the serial numbers filed off. Aladdin, Alibaba, raiding towering dungeons for the treasure and the jinn inside. Underneath, it's a series genuinely interested in how kingdoms work, trade, slavery, currency, the machinery of empire, and it lets those systems drive the wars its characters end up fighting. Jin equips turn jewels into elemental chess, and Morgiana remains one of my favorite powerhouses in shonen, a former slave whose kicks land with enough force to crack some stone and enough history to crack you. When the anime ended with the story unfinished and no adaptation of the rest in sight, I did what any reasonable person does. Inhale the entire manga over a single weekend and emerged blinking into the sunlight, changed. That grudge against this industry remains open. Read it when you're done watching. You'll thank me and curse me in the same breath. I was there in 2015, refreshing forums every week while One Punch Man aired, and I can confirm the hype was a physical force. Oh, and the most viewed video on my channel is still a One Punch Man video. The premise shouldn't work. The hero wins every fight instantly. But that's the joke, that's the show. So where's the tension? Everywhere, it turns out, actually. Saitama's boredom sits at the center while the tension gets outsourced to everyone around him. Genos gets blown down to a torso. Moomin Rider, an ordinary man on a bicycle, pedals towards a monster he can't possibly beat, and that scene still puts a lump in my throat in a comedy about a bald guy. Then Boros forces Saitama to take things even slightly seriously, and Madhouse responds with a sequence I studied frame by frame like it owed me money. I crowned this my action anime of 2015 back in the day. The sequel seasons couldn't catch the lightning twice, we all know it, so there's no point relitigating it here. The first season though, untouchable. 12 episodes of pure joy.
か、うぜえ。
Need you to understand how small Denji's dreams are. Bread with jam, a warm bed, a girl who might like him back. That's what he's bleeding for, and it broke something in me. Denji merges with his pet devil Pochita to survive, becomes a chainsaw-headed weapon for public safety, and gets passed around by people, one woman in particular, who see a boy with nothing and recognize how easily nothing can be steered. Mappa shot the series like a grim art house film, restrained palettes, deliberate cameras, which makes the eruptions of devil-hunting violence feel almost obscene when they arrive. I argued about the direction with friends for weeks. They wanted this manga's feral chaos. I defended the quiet, because the quiet is where the dread lives. Then the Reze movie last year finally settled our group chat. That thing is a bomb with a love story for a fuse. Fujimoto writes action like a man who resents my emotional stability specifically. I keep coming back anyway.
黒崎一護だ。
15-year-old me filled the margins of school notebooks with badly drawn bankai. Adult me, watching the 1000-year blood war, is annoyed to report the kid had impeccable taste. Nobody in this industry has ever outstyled Kubo Tite. The man designs a sword release the way other people design album covers. Every bankai is a statement piece, and the whole cast drips with the black and white swagger the genre spent 2 decades borrowing from. The Soul Society arc remains one of the great sustained runs in shonen history, a rescue mission escalating through an entire society of swordsmen, each fight peeling back another layer of the world. Then, the anime died in 2012 with the story unfinished, and for 10 years, Bleach fans like me were the saddest people at the party, cornering strangers to explain what the ending would have been. The return healed all of it. TYBW came back with production values the original could only dream of, an apology and a victory lap at once. Style is substance when you commit to it this hard.
死神対抗だ。
Quick pause here, okay? If you're enjoying this, a like helps more than you'd think, and consider subscribing if you're new, because we're about to enter the heavyweight division.
おい、お前。こんなの初めてだ。わかるか。なあ、僕の敵。
Right, where were we? Yes, Mob Psycho again. It was in my all-time favorites video. It will be in every list it remotely qualifies for, and I'll keep doing this until the numbers improve. I've told you before that Mob Story felt like watching my own teenage years. All that emotion with nowhere safe to put it. Today though, let's talk about it purely as action, because Bones produced some of the most inventive fight animation of the modern era for a story that fundamentally distrusts fighting. Every psychic battle is a hand-drawn fireworks display, paint on glass, sketchy pencil chaos, geometry folding in on itself, and the show frames every single one as a failure state. Mob's power scales with feelings he can't express, so when that percentage counter hits 100, the spectacle doubles as a panic attack you can see from space. Watching those climaxes as someone who also bottled everything up as a kid is a strange, cathartic experience I recommend to everybody. Reigen remains one of the greatest mentors in anime. It's an action masterpiece that wants you to be kind.
俺にはな、霊能力も超能力も何の力もないんだ。持ってないんだよ。眼鏡だ。
A lone escort crosses a dying empire's desert with a child in tow, and every stranger on the road is a potential blade. If that sentence does anything for you, I have your next obsession. Blades of the Guardians. Bao Ren is a donghua set in the final, rotting years of China's Sui dynasty following Dao Ma, a mercenary bodyguard whose simple escort job towards the capital curdles into a conspiracy far above his pay grade. The source manhwa draws comparisons to Vagabond, and the adaptation honors that lineage. Ink-washed, grim, sword fights that feel heavy and exhausted rather than flashy, violence with actual consequences in a land where the government itself is the biggest bandit. Dao Ma traveling with little Zhao Shi gives the brutality something to protect. I watched season 1 twice during the 3-year wait for more, which tells you everything, and season 2 finally arrived this June. I get more messages about my donghua picks than almost anything else I cover, and this is the one I point people to first, so seek it out.
てめえのつけば金では払えねえぜ。
My wife once walked in on me pausing JoJo to applaud, alone, at a trick involving a power that only works through reflections. She didn't ask. She knows. Strip away the poses, the outfits, and the characters named after your dad's record collection, and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is secretly the smartest fight writing in shonen. Araki builds every battle like a riddle. Stands come with absurdly specific rules, and victory goes to whoever exploits the fine print first, not whoever screams the loudest. And because each part reinvents everything, era, protagonist, tone, the series never calcifies. Phantom Blood's hammer horror melodrama and Golden Wind's mafia opera barely feel like relatives, yet both are unmistakably JoJo. I gave this franchise its flowers in my videos too, so I'll spare you the full sermon here. But as pure action engineering, decades of it, endlessly imitated, never matched, it earns this spot on merit alone. The posing is the bonus. The bizarre was always the point. There is before episode 19, and there is after. I remember exactly where I was when the Hinokami sequence aired, half asleep, planning to watch one episode before bed, and suddenly very awake, texting people at midnight like something had happened to the family. Half the internet was doing the same, watching Ufotable fold digital effects into hand-drawn animation until the seams vanished. Demon Slayer's story is deliberately simple. A kind boy, a demon sister, a sword, and I've argued for years that the simplicity is a feature. It clears the stage so the craft can perform, and the craft has never once missed. Mugen Train became a box office phenomenon in the middle of a pandemic, which should be impossible, and the Infinity Castle film tore through records again just last year. I watched that one in a packed theatre that gasped in unison, an experience I'd honestly forgotten cinemas could actually provide us. Is it deep? Well, not especially. Is it the most beautiful action production line ever assembled? I struggle to name a rival. My Hero Academia grew up alongside my channel, and I can chart both by its set pieces. Deku shattering his own arm because borrowed power costs flesh. The sports festival match where Todoroki's fire finally answers. All Might emptying the last of himself against All for One while an entire city screams at him to stand. I was on my feet for that one, alone in my living room, and I regret nothing, okay? Bones understood something crucial. A superhero punch only matters if you feel what it costs. So every signature moment in this series is built on sacrifice, on bodies breaking to protect something. Add the most weaponized soundtrack in modern shonen, Yusei Run has carried more hype scenes than some entire studios, and you get a machine engineered for goosebumps. The series gets dismissed these days for being popular, which is the laziest criticism in fandom. Watch the endgame material and tell me the fire went out. Plus, Ultra meant something to a whole generation. It still means something to me. After the riots in my comments when One Piece missed my favourites list, and the peace treaty when it made my anime that made me cry list, let's settle this properly. As pure action, where does it stand? Well, higher than people admit, I think. Luffy is the most creative fighter in shonen, a rubber idiot whose battles are improvised physics experiments, and Oda escalates across decades without breaking his own internal logic. The Wano production run turned weekly television into event cinema, and the Gear 5 reveal was animated with a loony elastic joy that felt like the whole medium remembering cartoons are allowed to be fun. I rewatched it 3 times that same day and laughed harder each time. But One Piece action has a property nothing else has on this list: accumulated weight. When Luffy throws a punch for someone, I've usually had 300 episodes of reasons to want to throw that punch. The impact is emotional compound interest, and yes, I have cried. There's a whole video about it, link below. 25 years of build up, and the payoffs keep clearing the bar. Underneath the memes, this franchise quietly hosted some of the most influential fight animation ever broadcast: Lee vs. Gaara, the final valley of the End Clash. Choreography that shaped a generation of animators who grew up on it and now run the industry's biggest productions. Kishimoto understood rhythm, hand signs as build-up, jutsu as release, with emotional stakes braided through every exchange so the biggest fight doubles as arguments between broken people. Pain's assault on the Leaf still stands amongst the great sustained arcs in shonen, grief, ideology, and spectacle detonating together. Yes, the filler is a crime scene. Yes, the pacing wanders, but this show gave me my best memories, my career, and my marriage. Every dash, clone, and Rasengan since owes it rent. Datebayo! Sorry, I had to. Akinamero! Rasengan! Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is my conversion tool. 3 separate friends who swore they'd never watch anime went in skeptical and emerged 64 episodes later asking, what's next? It's never once failed me. As an action series specifically, its superpower is legibility. Alchemy runs on equivalent exchange, clear rules, clear costs, so every fight is readable. You understand what a character can do, what it costs them, and exactly how much trouble they're in. Watch Mustang fight and you're watching applied chemistry with a grudge. Ed fights small and scrappy, transmuting the environment because he lacks reach and knows it. And don't tell him I said that. Armstrong hits like generational pride given biceps, and because the plot wastes nothing, every clash advances a war, a conspiracy, a brother's promise. I call it the yardstick in my favorites video, and the yardstick it remains. No filler, an ending that sticks the landing. Some shows on this list I love with caveats and apologies. This one I love with none. The gold standard stays gold. I rarely meet people who love the Fate series as much as I do, which is why I have personally drawn watch order charts for at least 5 confused friends. Consider this entry chart number 6. The pitch without the homework. 7 mages summon 7 heroes from history and myth and make them fight to the death over a wish-granting grail. That premise has powered some of the most staggering action ever animated. Fate Zero gives it tragedy and Urobuchi's cold philosophy. Unlimited Blade Works gives Ufotable their most extravagant servant clashes like natural disasters with swords. The Heaven's Feel film drags the mythos somewhere darker and more intimate, and Strange Fake, which made my best of 2026 list, proved the machine still has fuel decades in. What holds it all together is that every servant is a legend with a wound, and the fights are really arguments about how they lived and died. Start with Zero or UBW, whichever poster appeals to you more. The Grail War will handle the rest. Then, come talk to me, please.
Ah, yes!
Jujutsu Kaisen fights read like they were storyboarded by someone with a camera strapped to a hornet, and covering this show has been some of the most fun I've had on this channel. That kinetic whip pan chaos is Mappa's signature here, and it changed how modern shonen action feels. Fast, mean, shot from the inside rather than beside it. The cursed energy system rewards mid-fight technique explanations in a way that should kill momentum and instead supercharges it. Gojo casually lecturing an opponent on why they've already lost is the series in miniature. Shibuya broke me in real time. I watched it weekly, and there were weeks I dreaded pressing play. An entire arc where wins feel like losses, and losses leave craters in the cast. If it's all my best of 2026 so far video, you know the Cunning Game adaptation topped it, so my bias is fully on record. The staff behind these seasons deserve better working conditions. That needs saying every single time. What's on screen though is era defining. This is the current generation's benchmark.
線を越える拳のやり取りとなって両者の間に無数の火花を生んだ。
If most battle shonen are rock concerts, Hunter x Hunter is a chess tournament where the losers get eaten, and I've rewatched the Chimera Ant arc 3 times, chasing the feeling of the first. Nen is the finest power system in the medium because Togashi treats limitation as the source of strength. The more conditions you chain to an ability, the stronger it becomes, so every fighter is wagering pieces of themselves. That one idea turns combat into negotiation, prediction, and bluff. Fights are won in the setup, sometimes days before anyone throws a hand, and then the Chimera Ant arc takes all of it, the games, the rules, the cleverness, and aims it at a question no shonen had asked seriously. What actually separates a human from a monster? Nadero versus Meruem is my answer whenever someone asks me for the greatest fight in anime, and my reasoning has nothing to do with choreography. It has to do with what I felt when it ended. You knew, didn't you? If you spent any time on this channel, you knew what was standing at the end of this list. I watched the first episode of Attack on Titan as a college student in 2013, and I've now spent my entire adult life as a fan inside the story. The waits between seasons, the theories, the finale, the arguments about the finale. No other series has that kind of claim on me. The ODM gear alone deserves a lecture series. Humans as pendulums, battles conducted in 3 dimensions at terminal velocity, terror and grace sharing a single frame. But the real weapon weapon was dread. Every early engagement is fought by people who fully expected to die. So every survival feels stolen. Then the story mutates. The horror becomes war, the monsters get faces, and the action turns into moral events. Victories you can't cheer without checking who's under the rubble. Sawano scores the apocalypse like a cathedral choir on fire. This is the summit, and this is where the list was always going. You might say some of these are recency biased. I could keep milking the same old ones, but we move on with the times. 1,000+ anime, and these are the fights that got tangled up with my actual life, my college years, my marriage, my career, my questionable sleep schedule. Now it's your turn. Drop the action anime that's woven into your story, especially if I skipped it, because that's how half my watch list gets built. Like the video if it earned it, subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you in the next one.